Heyo, what's going on, everybody? It's episode 195 of the Audible Farm Podcast, and this episode is brought to you by Couchtown Coffee. I drink Couchtown Coffee every morning. It's my favorite coffee. The only time I don't drink it is when I run out, and then I have to drink something else, and it just reminds me how much I enjoy Couchtown Coffee. It's roasted right here in Iowa. Go to couchtowncoffee.com, find a coffee you like, make an order, and when you do, let them know Audible Farm sent you, and they'll give you 20% off. Why? Because Couchtown Coffee is that awesome. Thanks, Couchtown. This week, I'm sitting down with Jacob Williamson. Jacob is somebody that a lot of people in my area knew who he was before I did, mostly just because I came into the music scene a little late in my area, but he grew up in the north central Iowa area and then traveled to go to AIMM, which is the Atlanta Institute of Music. And he graduated from there. He's had a lot of adventures since then. And we go over a handful of them in this episode. I kind of wanted to pick his brain on a few things. Like, I don't know, how do you get so good? Exactly. But I mean, it's the obvious answer that always comes back around. You got to practice. But having the drive to do all that practicing to get that good is something that should never be undersold. I mean, anyone could practice anything and get good at it and not have the heart to want to play things. But Jacob is obviously one of those people that has the drive to want to go do these things. He's very, very good at bass. I've heard him play all sorts of stuff. One of the most insane things is he plays bass with Jesse Wilson on occasion when Jesse pulls full band shows. And we've played songs that he'll just be like, you know the leads to this? And I'm like, I actually don't know the lead guitar part to this. And he says, I know it on bass. And it's like, go ahead and play it. So we'll play like, I don't know, Sweet Child of Mine or something. And he's just rocking all the bass lines out and stuff. And he's pulled bass solos on other songs just for fun. He's so talented. It's so fun to get to sit down and talk with him. I had a blast in this episode. We talk about, like I said, his music education. We talk about a few of his travels after going to AIMM and then coming back to the Fort Dodge area. I bet this guy is just going to keep going out there and just crushing it one way or the other. He's super, super talented. It is just absolutely mind-blowing that there's this many talented musicians in the north central Iowa area. I don't know what it is about Fort Dodge, but they're just breeding some of the best bass players ever in the entire state. Hands down, it's just mind-blowing. I've got the opportunity to play with a handful of really good bassists over the past few years, and Jacob's one of them. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. It's an amazingly fun talk, sitting down with my buddy, Jacob Williamson.
It's the Audible Farm Podcast with your host, Peter Stockdale.
Sitting down today. Do you want to go by Jake or Jacob?
Jacob.
Is there a reason?
I don't like being called Jake.
That's a good enough reason for me. All right, I'm sitting down today talking with Jacob Williamson, and I actually had no clue who you were until 3 or 4 months ago. Which, does that seem weird to you? Do you feel like somebody, how does somebody in the music scene not know who I am? I mean, not to be like, you're not a braggadocious person, so
I was gone for 4 years.
Yeah, okay.
And I was 21 when I left and just kind of didn't go out, so.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. I mean, after hearing the story, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, he's not new to the scene, but he just came back. And there were a lot of people that knew who you were when you came back. And I'm like, does everybody know this guy? And it's like, oh, I keep forgetting I'm kind of the new guy in the scene because I've only been playing guitar for out and about for 5 years.
I feel like we've probably met beforehand, too.
That might be a thing.
Because I was in Steel and Candy, and I know that they played with you a few times.
Okay.
Or at least with Three Finger Betty. I don't know if you were from the beginning or not.
I've been with them for 5 or 6 years, so anytime in that time span, that probably happens, so that's kind of wild. I wonder how many people I've actually, possibly interacted with or been in the same building with that I don't know I have yet or something like that. It's pretty wild, so. Well, let's start at the beginning. So, you said you left Fort Dodge, but what did you start playing? Did you play music growing up, or did you play piano, or was it trumpet in school, or
nope?
None of that?
I did not start playing until high school. I wanted to growing up, but my parents wanted an athlete, so
Yeah. Were you a good athlete?
no.
Okay.
And then I broke my arm in a snowboarding accident, bugged my parents for a guitar for Christmas, and then finally got it and wasn't able to play it because I was still in a cast.
Oh no.
So I think that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah. So you just had to like sit there with a guitar and not play it?
I still learned it.
Okay. All right.
I learned how to play like Ode to Joy, like the one note at a time thing,
Mm-hmm.
as every beginner does,
Yeah.
because I couldn't close my hand.
I mean, so how do you function? Like, does that have like after effects from like permanently, or?
I can't play violin anymore. I started playing violin my sophomore or junior year of high school, and had to get surgery done on that same arm,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't bend my wrist like that anymore.
Oh,
Because they
crazy.
have to do the really far stretches.
Yeah. You get like all weird and angled off with their fingers and
Mhm.
stuff. That's crazy. I guess I didn't know you played violin. So how many instruments have you played? Let me ask you that. Like, to some extent or another. So like for me, it'd be like, bass, guitar, ukulele. Like those would be the three I would say I have like experience with. That's it. Like, I mean, I've played a mandolin, but I'm not good at it.
I started on guitar, and then I started playing bass a year later, and then I started playing violin a year later. So I guess it was my junior year I started. And then I joined the marching band, and I played percussion. I learned piano in college at Iowa Central. I didn't have to do any of that down in Georgia. I've got a ukulele upstairs. I took classical singing lessons for a couple of years.
Oh, that's crazy.
So
maybe you should be doing the background singing with Jesse, not
no,
me.
those days are long gone.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay. Well. So what got you interested in the violin? It seems like a crazy jump because most people are just like, I want to play the guitar. I'm going to rock because I'm or I'm metal or I'm punk or like they have that whole feeling. But like it seems like a weird avenue to take to go to violin.
I was really into Ailstorm.
Okay. All right. Makes sense.
So
Yeah.
that was pretty much it,
Yeah.
honestly. And I have always listened to people like John Williams and Hans Zimmer.
Yep.
So the way that they make music to me that's like the top of the top for me.
Yes. So I feel like a lot of people get experience with like horn instruments, like woodwinds and brass winds and etc. But there's not a whole lot of stringed like bowed instruments like you would normally see in like a symphony. So I always viewed that kind of stuff as just like mystical and magical. It's like I had cousins that played the violin and they were good at it, but it was still like, I don't know how people do this. There's no markings on it. It's like
Right.
it's kind of mind blowing.
Well, the other thing was that I wanted to play upright bass.
Okay.
We were not going to spend that much money on an upright
Oh
bass.
yeah, $478,000 for a used one or whatever the
And-
heck it costs.
And for some reason, my parents were like, well, we'll just get him a violin instead.
No,
I don't know if it's
guess.
because they look the same and one's just like a lot smaller or what the deal is.
Maybe they were just like, we'll get him this cool miniature stand-up bass, and then they were like surprised that it wasn't just a novelty item.
That's how I got my U bass.
U bass. Let me see here. Oh, the upright bass.
No, it's literally a ukulele with
Ukulele.
bass strings on it.
Okay. I don't know if I've seen that before.
I'll show you before you leave
All
today.
right, that sounds good. Oh man, that's crazy. So I mean, like, it's kind of cool that you seem to have a personality where it's like, I want to learn how to do this, or I'm interested in this. I'm just gonna go do it, and then you go do it. So like, that kind of lends itself to being, when I first was introduced to you, like watching you play, I was like, oh, this guy's really good, and I found out you went to school for it and stuff. But it kind of explains that drive that you have, because I mean, there's a lot of people that want to be musicians, but there's not a lot of people that want to actually go to school for it, So let's talk about that. What led up to you deciding you wanted to go to school for this?
I tried I went from high school just to working a job up in Minnesota. Was not there very long. Realized I hated it. Wanted to go to school because I wanted to be in a band and be around other musicians. So I went to community college. Realized none of the musicians there wanted to do anything band-wise. Most of them wanted to be music teachers. I didn't want to be a music teacher. So, and I did not want to do all of the like core classes. I didn't like math or science or anything like that at the time. And I knew that AIMM had a 1-year program where I could just focus on bass and nothing else.
Okay, all right.
Basically, I didn't go to college to get anything out of it. I just went to college to like be a better musician and to meet more people.
Yeah, honestly though, the music department at Iowa Central has always been pretty good though. So
It is really good, and Paul's a great teacher.
yeah, it's always been like I said. There's just always seems to be a. It's weird because it's small because it's a community college, and I'm so used to seeing like the whole high school like being up
Right.
for band or whatever. But you go to college and not everyone does it, but it's pretty stellar what they're able to pull off there. So it's pretty wild. Plus it's not just like concert band, marching band, that stuff. They have all the ancillary classes you can take like music theory and things like that, which is pretty cool.
And that class was what led me to wanting to go to AIMM.
I will have to say it was the most intriguing class I took in high school was like college intro to music theory. It was like the 101 class of music theory.
Well, so I knew I wanted to study music, but I didn't want to study classical music.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to study jazz. I wanted to know stuff that I could apply more. I don't want to say realistically, but like if I'm on a gig and I have to just wing it,
Mhm.
I need to know how to just wing it. And I feel like a lot of classical players is on the page. And I can read music. Like,
That's also crazy to me.
I studied music, reading music, super intense when I was there. Because all the gigs I got out of school were sight reading gigs.
You're just sight reading sheet music,
Yep.
which is weird because I was okay enough with the trumpet to kind of sort of pull it off. You know, like I can still read sheet music and I can still play a trumpet well enough that if I practiced, I could pull it off. But I just recently started giving bass lessons to somebody that wanted to learn sheet reading bass, and I was like, oh man. So I like had to like pull up some jazz, like beginner's jazz bass stuff, and I'm like, here we go. And it's not super difficult, but it's not super easy though.
It's one of those things where people make it sound a lot scarier than it is. Especially as a bass player, where most of the time you're not playing more than one note at a time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like tablature. I've never liked tablature.
Okay, so why do you think that is? Because I have a guess, but
Why I don't like tablature?
yeah.
Feels like the easy way out a lot of the time. And it's more for me personally. And a lot of the time, I grew up going to Ultimate Guitar.
Okay. Yep.
And then I started trying to make my ear better to the point where I could hear everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that a lot of it was just wrong.
Okay.
And the other thing with it, in my opinion, is I play a 6-string bass.
Mm-hmm.
Unless it's going lower than a B, I don't drop my bass for anything.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm reading sheet music, I don't need to retune my instrument most of the time.
Oh yeah, you don't have to like mentally think about like, oh, this is somebody with a drop tuned bass instead of okay. So that makes tons of sense. I was thinking like the biggest thing that I always got out of like tablature or like showing students tablature, because it's just like here's an easy way to get an idea of what a song's like basic structure is, but like it doesn't show you any rhythm.
Right.
And that's the one thing that they always come back with is like, how do I know how to play this? I'm like, you just have to hear it and then repeat that on the instrument. But like all the notes are there, but there's no punctuation to tell you what's.
That's the double-edged sword with it, though, because that's going to train your ear in a different way.
Yeah.
Because you have to be able to hear what those notes, those rhythms are.
Mm-hmm.
I guess my biggest thing is on an academic level. Like, if you plan on going to school for music, you need to know how to read music. If you don't know when you get there, you need to at least know the basics before you leave.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you said you went to school for music 1 year at AIMM, which is Atlanta Institute of Music?
And media.
Okay, Institute of Music and Media. So I guess I didn't know they did media stuff there. But so you said you chose it because you could do like a 1 year like only bass thing. But did you look at any other schools like before you went down there?
Yeah, I got into Berkeley and Juilliard both. But
Oh, really?
I didn't feel like paying that kind of money, and they
jeez.
weren't going to give me a scholarship. I paid for all my college myself, so I would rather
Wow.
owe $20,000 than, $250,000.
Yeah, and I can't remember. Like just like 2 years ago, I priced out Berkeley just for fun, and it was like, I think it was right around $250,000. So,
Well, and I'm not dogging on Berkeley because a lot of my good friends are there, but when I went there to audition, I met a bunch of people, and then when I went down to AIMM, I met a bunch of people. Weren't really a whole lot of differences. You had the people who wanted to be there and were dedicated, and the people who wanted to be there to say that they went there.
Okay. Because I mean, to some extent, like I guess like that makes me think like, is it because they're too talented, they don't need to be there, or they're just there because they're bored and have the time and money, or?
In my opinion, there's a lot of money being backed to them.
Okay.
Like they have a support system that's willing to pay for a lot of their schooling.
Okay. And I mean that, I guess are there people of all ages there?
Yes.
Okay, so like I'm just throwing it out there. Like if I just like quit my job and practiced for a year straight and got really good and did an audition and got in, like I could get in as a 30-something-year-old.
Yeah.
Nice. That's pretty cool. Okay, so my dream's not quite dead yet.
Yeah, it's
carpal tunnel hasn't set in yet, so that's pretty sweet. I guess I didn't know that you went there and tried out at different schools. I mean, everyone's heard of Berkeley. I mean, it's like, the Steve Vai school or whatever, so like everyone's been there. And we know people that have graduated from there that are like right in town here. And I will have to say, like, all the musicians that I've met that have graduated from there, like, crazy, weirdo good. Mm-hmm. But is it a 4-year or a 2-year?
Berkeley?
Yeah.
It's 4.
It's 4.
a bachelor's.
Woo! That's a lot of time to be spending mastering an instrument.
And that was my thing, is I wanted to get in and out as fast as I could so I could go gig faster.
That
and
makes
make
sense.
it a full-time thing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, if the end game is to use it as to be your job, why wouldn't you want to just get it done as fast as possible and go out there and make the money? If the end result is going to be the same, or you're going to get out of it what you wanted anyways, So what was like the coolest part about going to AIMM then?
It's going to sound super cheesy, but honestly, meeting all my roommates was there because we, in my opinion, were the 4 that took it like up seriousness-wise. Like, all of us strived to be the top of where we were at. I only graduated with one other bass player.
Oh, really?
So it was, he did his thing, I did my thing. He was more into the production side of things. He went for, like, the media side of it while taking bass classes. I was strictly bass, and my roommates were the biggest thing. Meeting some of the teachers there was just unreal. Like, every teacher that teaches at that school is a monster. And hearing stories about... Because I went because of Tosin.
Okay.
I went to that school because of Tosin Abasi.
Tosin Abasi. Yeah, I guess that's another, like, weird one. I don't want to get too far off on a tangent, but he plays guitar, like, in the Wooten style, which is, like, kind of wild. And for people that don't know, it's Victor Wooten and his brother... Reggie. One of them kind of sat down and like showed him.
Reggie showed it to Victor.
So yeah, so that was the whole deal, was like somehow or another it gets around to Tosin and it became his style, and it's kind of a crazy thing. I guess I didn't know that Tosin went to AIMM.
Oh yeah. He went there, and Devin Taylor, who drums for Justin Bieber, went there. Pretty sure he went there. Yeah, those guys were the main reasons I went.
That's cool. I mean, that's Justin Bieber's drummer is one of the reasons you went?
He's a beast, dude.
All right, I'll take it.
His whole band, dude, I'm telling you, they are wild musicians.
Okay, so let's brings up another topic that I'm going to sidetrack on. You knowing what goes into the music industry, and I'm sure you can like watch TV and just be like, I've seen that guy before, or like, I've was at a seminar with that dude, or whatever it happens to be. You could probably find a few here and there that you can be like that. And how much do you think that people undersell just like regular studio like musicians that you see on TV, where it's like, well, it's not James Hetfield from Metallica, so
all the time. Honestly, a lot of people don't understand what actually goes into a big production like that. Especially, and I keep talking about him, but Justin Bieber's is undeniably intense.
Yeah.
Same thing with Bruno Mars. I don't remember what show it was. Like he was on some fashion show, and their band rewrote the ending to 24 Karat Magic, and it's super intense. Like there's a lot that goes into it, and I think those people don't get the credit they need.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of, I don't want to say it sucks, but it does kind of suck that like some of those people are just unknowns, and they're just unfortunately going to be unknowns.
Right.
Which, it's kind of weird that that's the way the music industry works. So like having at least a little peek into it, going to school for it, kind of possibly having interacted with some of these people, did it like ever sour you off at any point where it's like, well, I understand that like there's nobody's going to get to the top of the mountain here probably, but there's definitely ways to make money, so I can at least, still make some money doing this. Was it ever like a feeling like that you kind of ran into, or did you still kind of maintain that like childhood bliss of
I had
an
a
instrument?
different outlook on it, I guess, because everybody's mountaintop's different.
Okay.
I didn't want to do that stuff.
Okay.
I've never really had the interest of being like a band leader, which like a lot of bass players are. I know Andrew Goucher is for Snoop Dogg.
Okay.
That's never what I wanted. I wanted to be an artist on my own,
Mhm.
whether money was being made or not.
Okay. So how much of that have you done then? Like I know that you had sent me one song that you had recorded, and you said you're not really like too big of a fan of like finishing whole songs because you kind of have that same anxiety feeling where you get stuff like partially done and you're like, I'll finish this later. I need to fix a couple things, and then it kind of just gets put on the shelf. So like, how much of that came to fruition in that sense then, that you just kind of wanted to do your own thing and become an artist in some capacity or another?
I have a ton of music that's just not released.
Yep.
Because I just never really got around to it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I had released an acoustic EP with a friend of mine before I went to AIMM. Took it down. It was really inappropriate. I didn't want it to mess with my image at the school, like on a professional level. But a lot of the times I would still rather, like, I want to be an artist, but I want to help other people write their music too.
Mm-hmm.
Like I did a lot of that at Muscle Shoals.
Okay.
When I was doing a country album there with a good friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, I guess, does that answer your question a little bit?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it just brings me like right to another question. So you mentioned Muscle Shoals. So for those that don't know, Muscle Shoals recording studio, pretty famous, gets mentioned in songs. Just hit Google, you'll figure it out real quick. So you graduate from school. Is it just like instantly you're just like, I'm gonna go find a job at a studio, or like I'm gonna go try and join a band, or like what? I want to eventually lead up to like you getting to be at Muscle Shoals. Like, so like, where did we go? Where's the space in between those two?
I actually went there my first time when I was still in school. I had to take a week off to go cut a country record.
Okay. Crazy.
A friend of mine who actually lives in State Center got a hold of me and was like, hey, I'm going to go down there and I need a bass player. Like, can you come and do this? And then from there, I just started meeting a bunch of people. I ended up going back to see him again and finishing the record. I want to say a year later or 6 months later or something like that. And then when I graduated school, one of my teachers needed a bassist for his corporate band.
Okay.
Most nervous I've ever been in my life because it was all sight reading.
Oh,
they had
my
a
gosh.
list of like 200 something songs and didn't say what songs we were going to do. And I had maybe 2 months to figure it out.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Bombed.
Oh no. So what is this corporate band? Like, what does that entail? What is a corporate band?
I played a lot of weddings.
Okay.
Like big weddings.
So you're literally like, it's almost like just like straight up business only band.
That's exactly what it is.
Holy cow. So you're just like, do you have like people running it, or was the musicians being the only people that ran it?
What do you mean?
Were the musicians like in charge of all the business and the bookings and all that stuff, or was it like a booking agency?
We had a booking agency.
Okay, all right. So you were still like an autonomous band that like had a booking agency kind of backing you.
Yeah.
I was wondering if this was just some kind of like musicians for hire, where it's like this company's got like 50 musicians on retainer and they just slam people together and like sight read this and go play it, or is that even a thing?
That was It wasn't exactly it, but that's kind of what it was, because a lot of the people in this band, like, didn't know most of these songs. The band leader we had at the time knew all of them because he'd been doing it forever.
Makes
The
sense.
rest of us, they had either been in it and got out, or, like in my case, I had never been in it.
Okay.
So it was basically everybody read the sheet music, make eye contact. If something goes wrong, we got to figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the first times I ever played anything like that, like you're playing sheet music, so you're beholden to what is on the sheet music. But like the first time I ever did anything like that was just kind of like going to jam nights and things like that, where it's like, here's the chords, figure it out. Like you've heard the song, and it's like, okay,
Right.
And then that's what you get, and so you kind of like, it's nerve wracking and it's tough, and it's like, like you said, it's a weird feeling when everybody kind of gets off, and then you got to figure out how do we all get back on together, and I mean, it's definitely a learned trait. Once you get kind of good at it, you get good at it. But the other thing is, once you play with the same people enough, like you just all get good at it together,
Right.
So it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. But that's super crazy. What was your take on like playing with a corporate band? Was it difficult? Was it kind of tough not having any autonomy over what gets to be played at all? Or
I thought it was great because I didn't have to do anything. I just had to learn the music and show up.
I actually think that I get it. It's like simplicity,
But I fell into a hole with it where I became complacent,
Okay.
and I was okay with that. And eventually, when COVID finally hit in 2020,
Okay.
it kind of snapped me out of it, and I was like, well, this is not what I got here. This isn't what I'm here to do. Like, because I was so busy, I did that, and then I had a job, and I was teaching at the college, and it just became too much.
So the disconnect is you're not getting to create stuff, or you're just too busy all the time?
It was not having enough time to create, and if I wanted to... Basically, it was my day job that paid better at the time, or the gigs. And the gigs, I think, would have been the main choice if I would have been able to stay in the state more.
Okay. So like, where all did you go with this band? Was it just down in Georgia, or?
So we did all the way out to we did Baton Rouge, we did North and South Carolina, we did Florida, we did a lot of Alabama.
Okay, holy
so
cow.
It was like
the entire Southeast.
Yeah, and it wasn't a one-day thing. Like 9 times out of 10, even if you got home on the same day, you had to take the next day to recover.
Oh man, that'd be crazy. Yeah, I mean, long jaunt there, finish your stuff, long jaunt back. That's like a 24-hour day. So,
Yeah.
Holy cow. That's wild. So, you were talking about the difference between playing kind of what's there for you and creating something for yourself, like as a musician. So, like, that's a term I've heard people use where, like, it's the difference between, like, a musician and an artist, where, like an artist is somebody that will like go out there and like create stuff, where like a musician is just somebody that plays what they're kind of told or whatever. We're all musicians in some sense or another, and artist or not, whatever, however you want to label it. But it does bring up a good point, because I think that like when a lot of us grew up, a lot of people that grew up playing music were like, I play trumpet, I play whatever, and so that's all just sheet music. And then like there's a lot of those people that kept playing, grew up, and they're still really good, and they're in bands in their towns or the community bands or whatever, but it's still like you have to just play what's there, and you don't ever get to improv. And it makes me wonder how many people that still play trumpet into their 30s, 40s, whatever, how many of them have ever tried to improv with a trumpet? And like, is there any desire to improv? Like,
but that's the difference, and it goes back to what I was saying between classical music and jazz.
Oh, there you go. All right, yeah, that totally makes sense.
Because you still have a roadmap with jazz.
Yes.
But it's in my opinion, it's a lot more open-hearted, open-minded.
I still remember seeing like one of my first pieces of jazz music that like like I was like, can we get like the jazz guitar for this? And I'll try and play some jazz guitar like when we were in high school. And it was just like bass chords, like
Yep.
over open sheet music. And I was like, what do I do here? They're like, that's jazz. Like you got to figure out what you're doing. It's
Yep.
like, oh, there's an outline, but none of it's colored in. So you got to color it all in.
Usually they'll at least give you the melody.
It was pretty wild. It was just, I was just like, I can't play a guitar this well, so I'm out. But I was also like, I was one of those kids that like played in high school, and as soon as I like figured out how to play a power chord with distortion, I was just like, "This is good enough for me," and like that was as far as I learned. And
on guitar, that's how I am.
well, yeah,
I put no effort into my guitar playing, honestly, anymore. It's bass is where I started to branch out because I could just play one note at a time. I didn't have to worry about any chords.
all right, yeah, but you can play chords on a bass though.
That came later, though.
Yeah. But so you played guitar first, then bass,
Yep.
and then you decided to go bass, but you still played guitar the whole entire time you were going to AIMM then? Or no, it was just kind of like an ancillary instrument sometimes you'd pick up, or
Yeah, that one's more like it.
was it easy to apply what you were learning on the bass to the guitar?
In some ways.
All right. What was the easiest ways? Like obviously like a handful of the shapes are going to be the same.
Scale-wise, I mean, theory-wise, once you know it, I mean, it's one of those things where you know it, it's just a matter of sitting down and applying it and, like, memorizing it. I always was more interested in, like, textural guitar playing, though, and, like, I liked the jazz chords and stuff like that. I just never learned them.
They're pretty funky. It's like every day I'm scrolling through Facebook, I'll see a meme about jazz guitar chord, and it's just like somebody's fingers are in a knot. It's like, somebody's still sharing these? Like,
Yep.
Have we all seen these before? But it's true though. Some of those jazz chords are super funky. So, I guess yeah, the translation between the two is very, very easy because like the spacing of the notes apart from one another and the string spacing is note wise is pretty similar. But I bet there's like the transition where you're like, oh, I learned all this stuff on the bass to do all this funky stuff. Let's try and apply it to the guitar real quick, and then you're like, oh, I need to adjust for the fact that like the strings are thinner and I need to press less hard or whatever.
Yeah, that's the hardest part is the actual physicality of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I never had an issue before, and then when I stopped playing guitar for a while, when I went back to it, now I bend everything out of tune.
Because you're so used to needing all the extra muscle to push everything. It's hilarious. You ever feel like when you're playing a guitar that's like just feels like a toy?
Most of the time, especially because I play a 6-string bass.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. So yeah, you feel what 6 bass strings would feel like.
Yeah.
As opposed to 6 guitar strings. That makes me think. Does like the guitar string? Does it feel like one of those like rolly cheese cutters? Like kind of like I don't know, like one of those things that like chops a hard boiled egg to put it on a chef's salad. Is that what they feel like to you? Just
bit.
like thin little wires all stuck together. That's hilarious. It's so funny because I mean, I'm the opposite. I play guitar and sometimes I play bass, and obviously I haven't spent as much time with guitar as you have with a bass. But I recall like the first gig I did with a bass that was like a 4-hour gig. I was like, my like elbow hurts like so bad. I've played so many 4-hour gigs on a guitar. It's like, why is this that much different?
Yep.
And it's literally just like a few inches and a little bit of. Oh, it's so crazy. But I mean, is that something else that messes with you? Because you were talking about how your hand can't quite do some of the angles. Is it easier to hit them on a guitar or a bass?
That it doesn't really. It doesn't really bother me.
So is that something that like ever came into play, or was it just like adapt and overcome, or it's like it just worked then?
Like with the arm thing?
Yeah.
Well, so when I got the surgery on my arm, I was still playing bass. Like, I was still in a band.
Okay.
And it was the most ridiculous thing ever. And I'd just sit in my room and play because I was like, I'm not about to go, whatever it is, 8 weeks, 9 weeks, not playing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not going to happen. And when I got out of my cast, they weren't expecting me to be able to close my fist. Well, I had full mobility of my hand when I took it off. So,
they're probably like, what the?
what was supposed to be a couple months of physical therapy turned into 2 sessions.
Oh, well, okay. That's hilarious. Most of the time it's not that way. Most of the time, every time, if it's going to change, it goes longer, which is unfortunate.
That's kind of what I expected, too. When I would sit and practice, I'm like, well, this could screw something up or it's not going to, but I'm not gonna not play. So
There is that weird thing though, because they I had a couple knee surgeries, and they essentially green light you like a week into it to just start putting weight on it, and it's like, what, like how much? And like as much as you can handle. Like, I mean, don't go play basketball, but yeah, put some weight. It's like, are you serious? Like, you just cut parts out of me and like screwed other ones in there, and I'm supposed to just walk on this? And apparently that's good for it. Like, get back into doing what you're supposed to be doing, which is kind of crazy. So I guess it kind of worked out to be in your benefit then in the long run.
Oh, definitely, and it got me to stop playing football.
Football,
so I could just focus on what I wanted.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I mean, blessing in disguise. Because I mean, like, look at all the places you've been so far. Like, even just like on what you've like told me about. So that's like honestly pretty sweet. So you joined other bands after you left AIMM, and did you play like? Did you get to go on any tours or anything like that?
Nope.
No. All right. Well,
it was mostly. I would rather be a session player if I have to do anything like that, because I do not like leaving my house. I like being with my dogs. I like being with my girlfriend. I'm not a huge fan of traveling anymore. I had my fill.
All right, that makes sense. Because I remember you mentioning that once, that like, if you could have it your way, you'd rather just play in the studio than go out and play live, and that's even like on like a semi-local sense. I mean, you do go play live, but your preference is in the studio. So when you went to AIMM, I'm sure they offered some sort of like recording classes and things like that.
I didn't take them.
Yeah?
I took a studio class every quarter I was there, but it was just me recording bass.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have to worry about Pro Tools. I didn't have to worry about levels.
Mm-hmm.
The way they were doing it was, my job was to play. The sound engineer's job was to make it sound good.
Oh, okay. All right.
Which is not the best way to go about it.
Yeah.
With where I'm at now, because I don't know how to record now.
Well, you say that. So you showed me that one song you had. Did you record that stuff?
Most of it. I played everything but the drums. I recorded a sketch on Studio One.
Mm-hmm.
My roommate was the guy going to school for recording.
Okay.
So he helped me dial in all the tones I wanted.
Nice.
So
that's pretty sweet. I mean, I wish I knew more about recording stuff, and I feel like that's something like when I was out of high school, that was something that was like teased, where like some friends of mine were like, let's maybe go to this school and try it out, and we'd ended up not going to it, but which is unfortunate, but it's just the way it works. I wish I knew more about it. I've tried recording things, and once you start adding too many instruments, it's like, this is difficult now. Like it could be easy if it's just like an acoustic guitar and a vocal, but it's tough to actually mix things to make them sound good.
everything that I record is either written for a trio or a quartet. It is either two guitars, well, I guess five, two guitars, a singer, drums and bass, or it's one guitar, singer, drums and bass.
Yeah, even that's a lot though. Like, I feel like I have a tough time. Like, I've only ever tried to record drums once with like a really junky, like minimalist mic setup, so it probably like wasn't the easiest thing to start out with anyways, but like mixing drums is hard. Like,
I won't try it. I did it. I don't remember what the website is. I got stems for a death metal band, and it was like you can learn how to do this, and I looked at it and said, you know what, never mind.
yeah.
I'll leave that to the people who studied that. While they're studying that, I can keep studying my bass.
Oh yeah, there you go. I mean, do you feel like, I mean, obviously, for those that don't know, like I've seen you play. You've played with Jesse Wilson before. I've seen you at a jam night before, and I've seen you kind of just like dinking around like on your own and stuff. You're very good. You're not really one to just go out there and brag. You're pretty, you keep to yourself. But I'll just say you're very, very good. So like, do you feel like would you give up some of your quality of bass playing to pick up some studio knowledge? Like if that was the trade that somebody offered to you? No. So you still just think that like, to you, the bass is like, this is what it is. This is what I am.
Well, my opinion, or I guess the way I see it is, anybody can at least for the bass stuff I always got hired for, it's like 1/5 country music stuff.
Yeah.
Most guitar players are able to pull that off.
True.
But if I want to get the better studio gigs, I need to be a better player.
Okay. Yeah. True.
And if I'm a better player, the better sound engineers are going to notice.
Yes. Okay. So that totally makes sense. So like you're essentially like guaranteeing that you're not you're making yourself irreplaceable then.
More like adaptable.
Okay, I could see that. Because I mean, you don't. I don't know, it comes back down to like me saying that I played the bass guitar at a show for 4 hours. Like once again, it's exactly like you said. It's 1/4, a lot of 1/4, 1/5. Just it's a lot of real basic stuff, so I can pull it off. But like like you said with the adaptability, you showed up to play your first show with Jesse, and he just did he even send you a set list maybe or?
Jesse, I'm sorry if you're watching this. I didn't look at it.
Okay, yeah, I couldn't remember if he sent you one or not, and it's like obviously we knew you could pull it off, which is why we pulled you in, and it was just like, hey, come on, play some songs with us or whatever. But it's still one of those things where it's like you can lean over and be like, this is the chords we're hitting, and you could figure out what key it's in, and then so if something changes, it comes back to that adaptability you were talking about earlier. You're like, oh, they changed, it's this note, and I bet you could. I mean, I'm just assuming you could probably figure that out like on the fly without guessing wrong. Like probably 99% of the time. Does that make sense? Or because like I feel like if I'm blindly doing it, I would have to like guess my way to it, and I'd be like, no, that's not it. No, they're not hitting an A. Oh, okay, that's what it is. Like I might take me a few tries almost every time.
Even if it is wrong, though, I can usually hear how far off it is.
Ooh, that's crazy. That's nuts. So that's almost like hearing a tone and like throwing a dart at a map, and then you're just like, oh, now I can hear the difference between tone C and tone B, and now I know where B's at.
Well, that was something that got drilled into my head when I was at AIMM was pitch identification.
Mm-hmm.
So I needed to be able to tell if it was a perfect fourth or a minor third or if it was a dominant 7 chord. Like I had to be able to hear that.
That's crazy. That's really nuts. I mean, like, it's just based on like the commonality of music, but like the fourth and the fifth, fairly easy to recognize. Mm-hmm. But like you said, once you start getting like full chords and like doing like dominants and diminished and augmenteds, and it's like, what the heck is going on here? Like,
right.
That's the kind of stuff that my ear, I hear as just one full sound, and I can't pick the like 3 or 4 notes apart. And is that something that took a while to learn, or is that something that you would just like eventually just figured out, or can you hear something you had to sit down on a piano and plunk it out, or how did you first figure out how to do that?
I stressed out a lot about it because I didn't want to have to use tabs. I bring that up again because that was the ultimate goal for me, was to never have to use them. I just, even now, I will slow something down. If I have to slow it down to learn a solo or some crazy bass part, that's just how it is. But eventually your ear will start to pick up on it. For everybody, it's different.
That's so crazy. I don't even know, like, that is honestly just like a dream of mine to just, and it's weird because if there's people that are non-musicians that listen to this that have seen me play, they're like, you can play by ear. And it's like, I play by shapes is what I do. Like that's where my brain does. Like I see patterns on a guitar neck, and I know what patterns I can hit when and how, and that's like, it's not a whole lot different than what you're talking about, but it's very different than what you're talking about. Because
right.
I'm literally just picking a set of rules and following them. Whereas you're talking about like, you could do what I'm doing blindfolded without having to see any shapes at all, even though you could essentially be using the same shapes I'm using.
I still do fall back on shapes a lot.
Yeah?
And that's something that I try really hard to fall out of, because that means I'm not listening enough. I'm playing what I know works. I'm not playing what I want to hear.
Yes, 100%. I feel like it breeds this repetition that is eventually becomes guessable, if that makes a good way to say it. Like, I like going and playing 2 and 3 hour shows because it still feels like my solos still feel organic enough by the end if I'm playing them all off the cuff. But once you start getting into 4 hour long territory, it's like by the last hour, I'm even tired of hearing my own solos, you know? So like
Right.
playing just the shapes. So like, or like sticking to a set of rules and applying it almost every single time. So like you said, I'm only using what I know works every time, and I'm almost never going outside and trying to figure something new out. But that's why I kind of like going to jam nights.
But there's a time and a place for it too. I mean, you can play pentatonics anywhere.
Yes.
You can get away with playing the blues scale in most situations.
Yes.
If you're on a country gig and you're playing like a Mixolydian flat 6,
Okay.
it's gonna sound really bad to a lot of people. You might think it sounds great because your ear is looking for it. To those other people, it's gonna sound like you're playing a wrong note.
Okay. All right.
Especially if you ride on it.
Yeah. That's something I found was like, even if you play a note that should sound good and it doesn't, just like use it as a grace note and get the hell out of it, or like as fast as you can. It's like, all right, here we go. Hey, there, it sounded really good when I stepped away from it. You know, that's one of the weirdest things about music is I feel like one of the terms that I hear a lot of people use when they talk about music is like where like home is or home base, you know, or what is the root note or whatever. And a lot of people view a lot of songs differently when they are set up a certain way, where it's like, see, if you're looking at it the guitar way, you think this might be the root, but if you actually listen to the singing is the melody, and it tells you this is the root. And it's like, oh, that's why you can play like guitar, like exactly the same guitar solo in like 3 different keys on here, and it almost kind of sounds good. Like, oh, okay, all right. So like that's this weird thing about music that is just kind of, it's weird that stuff kind of works out. And like you said, sometimes you can play notes that you think should fit and your ear is listening for them, but nobody else is listening for that note and they think it sounds bad. And I feel like that's what a lot of people, when they listen to like most jazz music, think. Mm-hmm. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
I've equated it on the podcast a multitude of times as like jazz music is music for musicians. It's like not made for regular people. It's almost like a comedian's comedian. Like they're like usually pretty like edgy and foul. And it's like, it's not for everybody, but it makes all the people that tell the jokes laugh because this person's pushing the envelopes like even further, you know? So,
right.
Which is pretty wild. So like, have you played many jazz type gigs? Like where you're just like literally just going all over the place on the neck? Like,
it's not something that I've ever been comfortable enough with to where I am seeking it out. Mm-hmm. But when I would do these corporate gigs, we would do a dinner set. I was in a band with a guitar player who had a master's in jazz guitar and gave me no chances to say no. If I was supposed to solo over Donna Lee, I was going to solo over Donna Lee. I got no opportunity not to.
So when you played like those types of things, was there a lot of walking bass, or was there
99% of what I did was walking?
Was that tough to learn, or was that like one of the first things you learned on bass?
It is. I didn't learn it very well until college because I was constantly overthinking it. And I still do, because I hear all of these people like Paul Chambers and John Patitucci who are just monsters. And it sounds like they're doing all this crazy walking stuff, but they're not. They're starting on like the 3rd of the chord, the 5th of the chord, the 7th on the chord. They're not starting on the root.
Yes.
And it makes it sound like it's a lot more complex than it actually is.
That's the thing. Oh my gosh. I've said it before also on this podcast. Playing the bass guitar is not hard, but playing it well is hard. And that comes right back down to like walking with a bass. When I first figured out like the formula, it's almost like playing the pentatonic. You're like, oh, this formula works every time. And you just start doing it every time. And then you start to figure out that like, oh, this is starting to sound like, you know, redundant. It's overused. And then you're like, oh, this is what all the beginners use, and this is what all like the, you know, low end cover bands. This is like, and I'm not trying to like pick on anyone, but like this is all the basic walking that everyone learns how to do first. And there's so many people are so much better at it, and it's like just such a weird thing. Like you said, like you start on the 3rd instead, and it would create this formula that's completely different instead of just always starting on the root.
But you know what the big thing is when people are trying to learn how to do the walking bass? Nobody's listening. Nobody is transcribing what these guys are doing.
Yeah.
Like Paul Chambers, or I can't think of somebody else off the top of my head for some reason. Nobody's sitting down and transcribing it. They're more concerned about what Coltrane's doing, what Brecker is doing.
Yeah.
They're not worrying about what the bass player is doing. And as a bass player, why wouldn't you be paying attention to what the bass player's doing?
That's true. That's true.
You're playing into the guitar player's hands at that point.
That's true. So yeah, if you pay attention to the bassist, you get to learn all the. I mean, that's very true. Instead of just playing what the. That's you bring up a lot of good points with just that. I mean, but it's so crazy. Like how many of these like things that you think it's like, man, why is this so difficult? Why does this sound so much different when this person does it than when I do it or something like that? And it's like, oh, it's because you just need to take like the next step and go to the next level with it. And all of a sudden, it's like, look how much more textured this can get.
But even when you're playing it note for note, I mean, a lot of the way you feel about something is based on how you initially heard it, how you felt when you heard it
Okay.
the first time. Because, I can play Les Claypool bass lines.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't sound anything like Les Claypool. It does not sound as good as Les Claypool.
Yeah.
Same thing with Flea, because I don't get excited about it as much when I play it as I did when they played it the first time I heard it.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, so some of that's like imprinted on you, and some of that's also just like also on the artist that initially played it and recorded it. So like, that's kind of a good point though too. I mean, if you're out there playing music and you don't really, if you're not feeling it, I feel like that comes out of your instrument. Like, I believe one of the first shows we played together, I had this thing where I was just like, I'm going to repeat a phrase in a solo over and over again until somebody just looks at me and was like, what are you doing? And so I just did that. I repeated like a triplet just over and over again until you finally like looked at me and I was like, oh, okay, I'll go somewhere else with it. But that's kind of what it was, where I was like, I'm exhausted for playing all these solos. I'm running out of ideas. I wasn't feeling it this song, and it was just like, let's just see what happens with this. And I made a game out of it, and everything worked, and nobody in the bar threw any tomatoes, so everything was okay. But yeah, it's true. If you're not feeling it, I feel like people will notice, and it didn't take you long to notice, and it was like our second show together. So that's a very good point. I recall seeing Tool once, and none of them ever looked excited when they were playing, but I also kind of attributed that to they're probably paying attention because they're all playing weird polyrhythms. Or they've played all these songs 5 bazillion times and they're tired of it.
I'm not dogging on Tool, so don't take it that way. But when Michael Brecker solos, you can still hear that he's feeling it, and he's playing some hot licks.
Yeah.
So I don't give it 100% that. Tool is great. They have incredible stage shows.
Yeah, it's wild.
I do wish that they had more energy on stage, though.
Yes. Okay, so it's not just me that thinks that. Like Adam Jones, guitarist, right? Yeah, I was standing like right in front of him, and he just looked bored almost. But like I said, if I had to play some of this stuff like they're doing, I would have to really concentrate, because like even just to like play along with what they're playing in a basement, it's like this isn't easy.
Right.
So it's just wild. I've always enjoyed being around people that are like super good musicians, because I've always just kind of been like, I want to be a good musician, but I just don't have the time and energy and devotion to put into it like a lot of you guys have. So like being around people like you, it's just kind of it's such a breath of fresh air, because it reminds me that like, you're a human and this is attainable, and you kind of like lift my spirits, and it's kind of like being around people who are better musicians makes me a better musician, not only by proxy, but also like, after the fact, because it drives me to go further. So was there anybody around that was like that for you? Was there anybody that was like kind of your inspiration to kind of get you going further? Or was there like a buddy that was like your right hand man that played guitar with you through high school while you played, or was like a drummer dude or something? Was it the college roommates? Were they the ones that were finally like, boom?
I've always just found them. I've always just found people like that, and the very few times that I didn't have them, I was still very much on a path to where I wanted to go.
Mm-hmm.
My best friend growing up was a drummer,
Okay.
and his parents, bless their hearts, had to listen to some. Am I allowed to swear on this?
Yeah,
podcast?
absolutely.
Had to listen to some of the most bullshit music over and over again.
Yeah.
I mean, listening to us butcher Tom Sawyer by Rush.
That's cool though. That's cool.
I mean, it was like the South Park episode. It was just awful.
Oh my gosh. I don't want to. Okay, so if anybody's a Rush fan and you're a South Park fan, go look up Rush when they went on tour. Actually, the guys from South Park made a sketch just for Rush, and it's hilarious. So watch it. Yeah, but
It's my biggest regret, man, is not getting to see them.
oh,
There's nothing I regret more.
I got to see their 40th anniversary tour twice, and then I got to see them once in Canada as well.
My girlfriend will not watch the Rush documentary with me anymore.
Oh, it's so good.
Literally, I've watched that, and I've watched the Runaways with Kristen Stewart to the point where she will not watch them with me anymore.
The Rush documentary I haven't rewatched since Neil Peart died, which I feel like Neil Peart dying makes that documentary even sadder now. So, but it is damn good because it's so funny that they'll go places and Alex Lifeson doesn't get noticed. They're getting Geddy Lee's autograph and Alex Lifeson's eating a waffle right next to him, and they're just like, okay. Like,
I hate saying it though, but if Geddy Lee was not next to him and I saw Alex Lifeson walking through Walmart, probably wouldn't know it was him because everybody looks different.
Everybody does look. I'm bad at seeing people on TV, and even like, I don't care who it was. I don't care if it was Ozzy Osbourne or like, name a dead guy that's super famous and everybody knows who he looks like. It doesn't matter. I wouldn't be able to pick him out from a crowd. But you're right. Alex Lifeson does have a very like everyday guy kind of look to him. Like,
but that's a good thing.
That's
he
a great
did not
thing.
let all of the money he has get to his head like that.
True.
He's not driving around in a Bugatti. He's not walking around in $100,000 suits every day. Like, dude's just a dude for the sake of being a dude.
That's true. That's true. He's been on TV shows and stuff. He's a really funny guy. Did you ever see their induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Mm-hmm. Where he just did the gibberish?
Yeah, he just got up there, and the whole deal with this was they were kind of like upset that it took so long because it took like a lot of people writing in and complaining for them to finally like be like, okay, I guess Rush is rock and roll, we'll let him in or whatever. But he just went up there and he goes blah 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 blah, and he just like starts doing that a whole bunch, and then he stops and he gets his glasses out and he gets a piece of paper out of his jacket pocket. And he goes, blah, 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 blah. And he just keeps doing it. And the whole gist was he did it. And he's like, I think I did it so long at the beginning that now if I give a speech, it's going to be stupid. So he had a speech on the sheet of paper in front of him that he was actually going to say. And he just like kept going with it. So I don't know. They're absolutely hilarious. I love that documentary. I'm a huge Rush fan.
They're in my top 3 favorite bands of all time.
Oh, they're super good. I mean, I think in the documentary they just put it down, and it kind of like makes sense because I mean it fits the bill for what you are. I mean it was like 3 people who were just like hyperactive and wanted to learn everything about their instrument they could, and that kind of explains like Rush as a whole. Because I mean like their music's rock and roll, but it's like it's not just straight power chords with like verse chorus solo. It's like weird stuff with crazy bridges and.
Well, I was reading something not too long ago. Like within the last couple of weeks where Geddy Lee was talking about he doesn't like writing choruses because he doesn't know how. So they just don't.
That's hilarious. That's so funny. I mean, Neil Peart obviously is the one writing a lot of the lyrics for it, but I'm sure a lot of it gets changed and morphed around like, to fit the song as everything does. But like, it makes sense though too. I mean, What's the excuse for Def Leppard then? They just wrote like every single song they wrote. They didn't write verses. It was all just pre-choruses and choruses.
Don't get me started on Def Leppard, man. This is a podcast. I can't go that far. No, I'm going to ask you the questions.
Right.
What's your favorite Rush album?
Oh, shoot. I mean, as greasy as it sounds, like I've probably listened to the Rush and Rio album more than any album.
Isn't that a live album?
It's a live album.
That doesn't count.
That's a live album.
It's like saying their greatest hits.
I mean, if you want to say the second most listened to, it's actually a greatest hits one. What was the one that nobody liked? Was it Snakes and Arrows? What was people were kind of like
that album was great. I think that's what you're talking about. I don't know why people don't like it.
There's a couple Rush albums that even Rush fans are like, I don't know about that.
That's because Geddy likes his synthesizers.
That's true. And they did go through that, was it the Roll the Bones? Like that whole phase where like, even on Rush, the like R40 tour, that song came out and people went nuts because they were just like, it's like the lovable stepchild of Rush, you know? They're just like, this song, neato.
Right.
Oh, cool, you know? So I don't know. They became a band that I celebrated the entire discography. And like I said, there's some albums that might not be my favorite. What, like a Crest the Steel is like kind of super story songs, you know, like.
Let me double check and see what album this is actually on because I don't want to screw this up.
And I don't have my phone, so I can't. I mean, people are gonna light me up if I'm wrong, but it's like what Rush's like third album maybe or fourth. They even talked about it in the documentary how they started like getting too weird, and
there was. Yeah, Snakes and Arrows has Far Cry. That's his best bass line. I don't care what anyone says. That bass line is so melodic while still being a solid bass line.
Do you feel like that's a tough line to follow? Because I've seen enough bassists and played with enough bassists to know that there is like, you can be the rhythm guy, or you can just be all over the map, and being all over the map is cool, but it doesn't really lend itself to adding any rhythm to what's going on.
But that's kind of the thing with that bass line. Like, you have to listen to that later because he's singing while playing this super melodic yet still rhythmic bass line to where it doesn't feel like it's fighting with the guitar at all. Like, whatsoever.
All right.
And it's the same way that Les Claypool plays, where he's doing a lot of crazy stuff.
Yep.
DMV is a perfect example of that.
Okay.
But it is, or Jerry Was a Race Car Driver.
Yes.
Playing all this crazy stuff, but it still sounds like a solid bass line. In my opinion, those two are some of the ones that have mastered it the best.
That's crazy. Yeah.
And they sing on top of it.
Yeah, which is, it's mind-blowing. It's absolutely mind-blowing. It's so funny because it seems like an easy default where it's like, oh, the bassist, I mean, he's only playing one note at a time, have him sing. It's like some of the most memorable, notable bassist singers are like the craziest bassist singers out there.
Tom Araya doesn't get enough credit for that from Slayer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Slayer was very, very good live. Man. It was almost like one of the ones that was like shocking. I was like, I wasn't ready for that.
Did you see him on the Behemoth tour?
I saw them with Megadeth and Testament.
Okay.
So
Testament was one of my favorite bands growing up.
Testament was one I didn't get into until after high school, and I was just like, how come everyone listens to like the big four and these guys are like left aside?
I'd cut Anthrax in a heartbeat.
What?
In a heartbeat.
Dude, Anthrax is my favorite because they don't fit the mold. Like, all of the big four, they're just like, we are serious. All of our songs are about death and destruction and body dismemberment. And Anthrax is just like, I'm the man. It's like, what? Like,
someone said that Dave Mustaine tried to get Slayer kicked out. I don't know if that's true because I know what people do. They'll probably do that to this podcast. I'm going to get labeled as a bad guy after this.
No, they won't. You're the Dave Mustaine of the scene.
Because if that was true, I would switch Megadeth for Testament in a heartbeat. Chuck Billy's voice is monstrous.
Dude, it's huge. It's like, it's a weird way to describe it, but it's oh my gosh. It doesn't feel like it should be coming from one person.
It has the fullness of an opera singer. With grittiness behind it.
That's what it is. It's so good. It's one of those other ones too where it's like, I didn't listen to enough Testament to know like every single song. So like every now and then you'd be like somewhere and you'd be like, hey, is this Testament? It sounds like Chuck Billy. And it's like, yeah, it's Testament. It's like, awesome. I picked that one out, you know?
Well, their bass player is the dude from, I want to say Gene Hoglan's their drummer right now, but I might be wrong. But I do know that Steve DiGiorgio from Death is their bass player.
Oh,
and
crazy.
That dude.
Yes. I've listened to some death, and none of it none of it sounds easy. Not even the drumming is just insane on that stuff. It's so out there.
That was the first YouTube cover I ever posted, was Crystal Mountain.
Oh my god, that's like one of my favorites,
Yeah,
dude.
that's my favorite album by them.
It's so good, which is, it's almost like cheating to say that, because it's like Crystal Mountain's almost like the most publicly digestible song they have. Because, I mean, it sounds, there's like, oh, this has sections to it that are...
There's a reason for it, though. There is a reason that it is that way. Because it's a good song.
It's super good. Oh my gosh, I'm going to have to listen to that.
It's like Enter Sandman. People can get mad about it all they want. It's still a good song.
Yeah, I'm so torn on that. It's kind of like the whole Nickelback sucks. It's like, dude, they wrote music that a zillion people bought and loved, so are they wrong? Like... I don't know if they're wrong. Like, mine is just not. I always try to say it's not made for me if it's something I don't like and I'm crapping on it and it's still good. But I don't know. It's been awesome. What do we got? We're over an hour already, dude. It's kind of crazy. It doesn't really feel like an hour's gone by. And
easy conversation.
Hopefully we've gotten enough out of this. I guess like the last question is what made you come back to Fort Dodge? That's we're gonna tie it all back. COVID. It's it's sucky, but it's a crappy one-word answer. I knew the answer already, so.
Well, now I got 2 dogs and a bunch of other animals and a girlfriend, so I'll probably be here for a bit.
Nice. So at least have you around for a little while to hang out. So yeah, if people want to see you live, they can come see Jesse Wilson full band show. You are essentially the bassist that we got. You've been playing with us for the majority of this year, so yeah, we do have full band shows kind of coming up. I don't have my calendar on me, so I think this comes
July
out
3rd.
Yeah, I think this comes out after that. I'm trying to think of.
I got nothing.
I gotta count out the weeks, but yeah, if this isn't after July 3rd, that's the date. We'll be. Twin Lakes maybe? I don't know.
7 o'clock to 10 o'clock?
We're somewhere. Yeah, we're doing stuff. Check us out online, Jesse Wilson Music. Otherwise, you do have one song posted online under an alias. Should we tell people what it is or just...
Yeah.
All right.
The song's called Lizard Man. It's about Mark Zuckerberg and his trial. The band is called Captain Jub and the S.P.O.A. That's S.P.O.A. So go ahead and check that out too.
Yeah, definitely. I'll tell you what, I'll toss a link to it down below to at least Spotify or something. So if you don't have Spotify, then
it's on iTunes. It's on all. I use DistroKid. It's on everything.
All right. Yeah, definitely. So we'll put that down there in the description section somewhere. And dude, this is awesome. Like I said, I mean, I've literally only known you like maybe not even the majority of this year, or maybe just like. Part of 2022, which is crazy to think of. And here we're in a band together, and it's been great to actually sit down and ask you all the questions and kind of pick your brain in a way that seems more natural than me just trying to pick your brain in the green room at a show or something. Because wouldn't it be weird if we're just like getting ready for a show? It's like, hey, so what about all this stuff? And I'm just like grilling you with 40 questions. Like,
dude, I can talk for hours. So honestly,
all right, man. Let's build some more stories, and we'll bring you back on again.
Sounds good.
All right, we'll see ya.
Thank you.
Hats off to Jacob Williamson. Holy moly, I was grilling him with some weird questions in there. I mean, it's like asking somebody how they trained their ear is almost like trying to like describe a color to somebody who's colorblind. It just like almost doesn't make sense. So hats off to him for providing actually some really good explanations for how he did what he did. And when he couldn't, he was just like, I don't know how else to explain it. This is just how he did it. So hats off to him. It's really, really cool to hear his story going out there. I know a few people that have been to music schools and done things like that. And, I didn't go to any music school. I did end up going back to college as an adult, but I would love to, I guess I would love to have the passion that he has for playing music. We talked a lot about playing bass in this, but before and after the interview, he was actually playing guitar, and he's a damn good guitarist too. So don't undersell him on that. Holy moly. I mean, we were talking about that this episode. He played violin. I mean, I don't feel like anything's off limits for this guy. It's pretty wild. I had a blast sitting down talking with him. I had a blast hem-hawing with him before, during, and after. If you guys want to hear some other really fun Jacob Williamson stories, just hit him up before, during, or after his show. Probably not during, though. He's probably going to be playing. I hit him up before or after his show. He's probably got some more fun stories that I didn't unearth in this episode. Like I said, it's wild to know there's people that are out there going to school for this, to be not just performers, but like also recording artists, studio musicians, teachers or instructors and things of that level. It's just all these things that I'm pulling off on a novice level that, I guess I shouldn't undersell myself too much, but when you're around people like Jacob, it's hard not to. Holy moly, that guy's got some talent. So, like I said, go out and find him playing at a show somewhere. He occasionally hits up jam nights, depending on where they're at. Sometimes I have seen him at a couple, but otherwise, yeah, he plays with Jesse Wilson. He plays bass with him when he does full band shows, and man, honestly, one of the best bassists I've seen out there. So he's just so smooth like butter, and it's just something special, man. Gosh, bassists are a different breed. Those bassists, they can do things that just aren't easy to do, and I've said it before on the podcast, it's not difficult to play the bass, but I think playing the bass well is more difficult than playing the guitar well. That's just my opinion. I'm going to stick to it. But hats off to Jacob for sitting down talking with me. Thank you very much for joining me, Jacob, if you're listening back to this. And thank you guys for joining me for listening to this. The only link I'm going to share down below, I might share some Jesse Wilson music links. Otherwise, Jacob, I know he's released one song, but it's out there somewhere. I'm not sure if I'll share that one or not. I might. I think I will. You know what? I'm going to try and find it. I know it's on Spotify. I know it's probably on everything else that you can stream, because that's just the way of the world these days. So check out down below for some links. Otherwise, just go find him online somewhere. He's tons of fun. He's a cool guy. Like I said, I had fun hanging out with him before and after the podcast. He's a super cool dude. So, Jacob, thank you. Thank you guys all for listening. Check out down below for all the other Audible Farm links, such as the shop, the Patreon channel, and also the website in general, the YouTube channel. I mean, there's all sorts of links down below. I will have to say this week that I'm not sure what happened with the video, but there's no video this week. Jacob has lucked out. Jacob definitely got lucky on this one. I don't know, not that it's unlucky to be on video, but it's the only time it's actually like truly 100% failed and didn't save a video for me for whatever reason or another. So it's weird. You start the recording, you walk away, you assume it's going to be happening, and then when you get done with the podcast, there's nothing on the recorder. So I don't know. I do know for a fact I did record it. I have literally 2 seconds of the beginning of the interview, and then I don't know what happened. Usually when it runs out of space, it'll at least save what it can, but I have no clue what happened this week with the video. So there's no Patreon video this week, and so lucky Jacob. He said it in the beginning. He doesn't like to be called Jake. So Jacob, apologies, but hey, check out that Patreon channel if you're looking for video versions of the podcast. They're all on there except for this week, due to some technical issues or whatever you want to call it. So thank you guys for listening each and every week. Really appreciate it. And I'll check you later. Peace.